The medical bay of Space Station Omega-7 hummed with its usual quiet energy, but today was different. Dr. Tom Miller stood before the strangest patient he'd ever encountered in his 15 years as a neural engineer. The alien before him, Reed of the Stellar Commonwealth, lay motionless on the biobed, their iridescent scales dulled by months of immobility. Reed's accident during the construction of the new quantum communications array had left them paralyzed from their midsection down, equivalent to what humans would consider a severe spinal cord injury. The alien's unique physiology, with its triple helix nervous system, had stumped every medical professional in 3-star systems. "The damage is extensive," Tom muttered, studying the holographic scans floating above the bed. "But not impossible to work with." He ran his hand through his graying hair, mind already racing with possibilities. Back on Earth, he'd been developing an experimental neural interface system for human paraplegics. While it hadn't been approved for testing yet, the principles behind it might just work for Reed's alien biology. Reed's translator clicked and whirred as they spoke. "The other doctors said nothing could be done. That I would never move independently again." Their multiple eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep emotion in their species. "Why do you think differently, Dr. Miller?" Tom smiled, pulling up a chair beside the bed. "Because sometimes the best solutions come from unexpected places. Human medical science might be considered primitive compared to some species, but we've had to be creative. We've spent centuries finding ways to overcome our own physical limitations." He brought up a detailed projection of his neural interface design. "This system was originally meant for human patients, but with some modifications." He paused, fingers dancing through the holographic display as he made rapid calculations. "Your nervous system may be more complex than ours, but the basic principles of electrical signal transmission are universal." Reed's upper appendages trembled slightly, their species equivalent of holding their breath. "You would adapt your human technology for me? Is that even possible?" "There's only one way to find out," Tom replied, his determination growing. "It will take time, and I'll need to consult with experts in your species' biology. But I believe we can make this work." The alien scales shifted color slightly, showing hints of their natural vibrant blue for the first time since Tom had entered the room. "In all my travels, I've never encountered a species quite like humans. You see obstacles not as endpoints, but as challenges to overcome." Tom began making notes on his tablet. "That's probably our most defining trait. We've never been the strongest, fastest, or most advanced species. But we've always been good at finding solutions where others see only problems." As the station's artificial day cycle began to dim, signaling evening, Tom was already deep in research. He had no idea if this would work, but he was going to give it everything he had. Sometimes the greatest advances in science came from taking chances, from trying what others thought impossible. Reed watched the human work with growing hope. Perhaps their tragic accident would lead to something unprecedented, a bridge between human and alien medical science that could help countless others in the future. The stars twinkled beyond the station's viewports, bearing witness to the beginning of what might become a revolutionary collaboration between species. In the vast expanse of space, sometimes the greatest miracles started with a single person willing to try the impossible. 2 weeks had passed since Dr. Tom Miller's promise to help Reed walk again. The medical lab on Omega-7 had transformed into a bustling workshop of innovation. Holographic displays filled the air with complex neural maps, while prototype components lay scattered across multiple workbenches. "The main challenge," Tom explained to the station's medical board, "is adapting our interface to work with Reed's triple helix nervous system." He gestured to the detailed scans floating before them. "Their neural pathways process information differently than ours. It's like trying to translate between 3 languages simultaneously." The board members exchanged concerned looks. Dr. Jones, the head of medical research, leaned forward. "This is unprecedented, Miller. No one has ever successfully merged human and Commonwealth medical technology at this level. The risks are considerable," Tom finished. "But Reed has already agreed to them. They understand this is experimental." He pulled up his latest designs. Look at what we've achieved so far. The hologram showed a modified version of his neural interface. The original design meant for human patients had been completely reimagined. Now it incorporated elements of Commonwealth biotechnology, creating a hybrid system that might actually work with Reed's unique physiology. Back in the medical bay, Reed watched as Tom made adjustments to a prototype neural transmitter. Their scales had taken on a deeper shade of blue, a sign of growing trust and hope. The other doctors, Reed said quietly, they were afraid to try anything new. They kept saying the differences between our species were too great. They shifted slightly, the movement causing ripples of color across their immobile lower body. But you're different. You see the similarities instead of just the differences. Tom smiled as he calibrated the delicate equipment. That's another human trait. We've learned that underneath all our external differences, life tends to follow certain universal patterns. The trick is finding those patterns and working with them. He held up the modified transmitter. Your nervous system may have 3 helices instead of our 2, but it still uses electrical impulses to transmit information. We just need to create a bridge between our different ways of processing those signals. The next few days were filled with intense work. Tom collaborated with Commonwealth medical experts via quantum link, sharing data and refining his designs. Each failure taught him something new about how Reed's nervous system functioned. Late one night, as the station's lights dimmed to simulate evening, Tom had a breakthrough. He'd been staring at the neural mapping data for hours when he noticed something remarkable. "Reed," he called out excitedly. "I think I've found it." He rushed to the alien's bedside with his tablet. "Look at these signal patterns. When we tried to interface directly with your neural pathways, we were overwhelming them with our binary human-style inputs. But if we create a 3-stage processing system that mimics your triple helix structure..." Reed's eyes widened as they studied the diagram. "You're suggesting using my own neural patterns as a template for the interface?" "Exactly." Tom's fingers flew across the holographic controls. "Instead of forcing your nervous system to adapt to our technology, we'll make our technology speak your language. It's so simple, I can't believe I didn't see it before." The alien's scales rippled with cautious excitement. "How soon can we test it?" "I'll need a few days to fabricate a new prototype," Tom replied, already making notes. "But this time, I think we're on the right track." As he worked late into the night, Tom thought about how this project represented everything he loved about being human. They weren't the most advanced species in the galaxy, but their ability to think creatively, to see connections others missed, and their stubborn refusal to give up, these were their true strengths. The stars continued their eternal dance outside the station's windows, and somewhere in the vast cosmos, other paralyzed beings might soon benefit from this unprecedented collaboration between human ingenuity and alien biology. The next phase of testing would begin soon, and with it, the hope of making the impossible possible. The day of the first test arrived with both excitement and tension filling the medical bay. Tom had spent the last 3 days barely sleeping, perfecting the prototype neural interface. The device, small enough to fit in his palm, represented the best of both human and Commonwealth technology. "Are you ready?" Tom asked, running one final diagnostic on the system. The neural interface hummed softly, its bioorganic components glowing with a gentle blue light that matched Reed's scales. Reed's upper appendages moved in their species equivalent of a nod. "I trust you, Dr. Miller. Even if it doesn't work, you've already done more than anyone else was willing to try." The medical bay had been cleared of all non-essential personnel, though Dr. Jones and 2 Commonwealth medical experts watched from behind a safety barrier. The station's AI monitored every vital sign and neural reading, ready to shut down the system at the first sign of trouble. "Remember," Tom said, carefully positioning the interface near the point of Reed's injury, "we're just testing basic neural connectivity today. Don't expect to get up and dance." He managed a small smile, though his hands betrayed a slight tremor of nervousness. The interface used a combination of quantum entanglement and bioelectric fields to bridge the gap between Reed's severed neural pathways. In theory, it would translate the alien's neural signals into a format the interface could process, then back again, allowing natural movement commands to flow past the point of injury. Beginning neural sync in 3, 2, 1. Tom activated the device. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then Reed's scales rippled with color, starting from the point of interface and spreading outward like waves on a pond. Their eyes widened. I can feel something, Reed whispered. It's like a tingling sensation below the injury. I haven't felt anything there since the accident. Tom quickly checked the readings. The interface is establishing connections. Neural pathway translation is at 62% and climbing. How does it feel? Any discomfort? No discomfort. It's strange but not unpleasant. Reed's voice trembled with emotion. It feels like parts of me that were sleeping are starting to wake up. The monitoring system showed stable vital signs and increasing neural connectivity. Tom watched as the translation efficiency reached 85%, then plateaued. Okay, let's try something simple. Think about moving your lower left appendage. Just think about it, don't try to force anything. Reed focused, their scales shifting to a deep concentration purple. For several tense seconds, nothing happened. Then, almost imperceptibly at first, their lower left appendage twitched. The movement was tiny, barely visible to the naked eye, but the monitoring systems confirmed it. A genuine neural signal had passed through the interface and resulted in voluntary movement. It moved! Dr. Jones exclaimed from behind the barrier. Actually moved! Tom quickly held up a hand for silence, maintaining his focus on Reed. How did that feel? Any feedback from the system? I felt in control, Reed replied, their voice full of wonder. It wasn't like before the accident. Everything feels more distant, more mechanical. But I could sense the movement. I could make it happen. The test continued for another 20 minutes, with Reed managing several more small movements. Each success was carefully documented, each response analyzed. When Tom finally deactivated the interface, both he and Reed were exhausted but elated. This is just the beginning, Tom explained as he reviewed the data. The interface needs refinement, and we'll need to work on improving the translation efficiency. But we've proved the concept works. Human and Commonwealth technology can work together to bridge the gap in your nervous system. Reed's scales had taken on a brilliant, joyful blue that seemed to light up the entire room. When I was first injured, I researched the medical capabilities of every known species. None of them could help me. But you humans, you look at problems differently. You aren't bound by what's supposed to be possible. Tom began making notes for improvements to the interface. That's because humans spent most of our history being told things were impossible. Flying, reaching space, curing diseases, there was always someone saying it couldn't be done. We learned to take impossible as a challenge, not a limitation. As the medical team began their analysis of the test data, Tom knew this was more than just a medical breakthrough. It was proof that the greatest advances often came from combining different perspectives, from being willing to try new approaches. Somewhere in the station's database, a new entry was being created, the first successful merger of human and Commonwealth medical technology, a stepping stone to helping countless others across the galaxy. 1 month after the successful first test, progress had exceeded everyone's expectations. Reed could now maintain controlled movement of their lower appendages for up to 30 minutes at a time. But with success came new challenges that no one had anticipated. The medical bay erupted into chaos one morning during a routine testing session. Reed's scales suddenly flashed a dangerous red, their vital signs spiking dramatically. "Shut it down!" Tom shouted, his fingers flying over the control panel. "Something's wrong with the neural feedback loop." The interface powered down, but Reed continued to show signs of distress. Dr. Jones rushed in with emergency medical equipment. "What happened?" "The interface, it started generating some kind of resonance pattern," Tom explained, reviewing the data frantically. Reed's triple helix nervous system began amplifying the signals instead of just transmitting them. Reed's color slowly returned to normal as their vital signs stabilized. "It felt like fire," they explained weakly. Like every nerve was burning at once. Tom spent the next 3 days barely leaving the lab, analyzing what had gone wrong. He sat surrounded by holographic displays, empty coffee cups scattered around him, when he finally spotted the problem. It's not just about translating the signals, he muttered to himself. It's about understanding how they evolve over time. He pulled up the neural pattern recordings from the incident. Reed's nervous system doesn't just transmit information, it learns and adapts. Our interface wasn't keeping up with those changes. The solution required completely rethinking how the interface worked. Instead of a static translation system, they needed something that could evolve alongside Reed's natural neural patterns. We need to make it more human, Tom explained to Dr. Jones during a late-night strategy session. Human brains are constantly forming new neural pathways, adapting to changes. We need to give the interface that same flexibility. But implementing this change wouldn't be easy. It meant essentially creating an artificial nervous system that could bridge the gap between human and alien biology while being smart enough to adapt to both. Tom brought his revised designs to Reed, who had been moved to a regular medical room for recovery. I think I know how to fix the feedback problem, he said, showing them the new schematics. But it's going to be riskier than before. We'll be letting the interface learn and change on its own to some degree. Reed's scales shifted thoughtfully as they studied the designs. You're suggesting giving it a form of artificial intelligence? More like artificial instinct, Tom corrected. It won't think for itself, but it will be able to recognize patterns and adjust accordingly, just like a real nervous system does. The station's medical board was hesitant about this new approach. You're talking about introducing an adaptive system into someone's nervous system, one board member argued. The potential for things to go wrong is less than the certainty of failure if we don't try, Tom countered. We've proven the basic concept works. Now we need to make it sustainable. Reed, despite the recent setback, remained surprisingly optimistic. On my world, they said during one of their regular checkups, we have a saying, the path to the stars is lit by those who dare to burn. You humans, you're not afraid to burn brightly, even if it means risking failure. Tom worked tirelessly to implement the new adaptive system. Each component had to be perfect. There would be no room for error this time. He brought in experts in artificial neural networks, quantum computing specialists, and even a few Commonwealth scientists who had experience with adaptive technologies. As the new interface took shape, Tom couldn't help but reflect on how this project embodied the very essence of human innovation. They weren't just solving a medical problem anymore. They were creating something entirely new by combining the best aspects of multiple technologies and approaches. The next test would be crucial. If it worked, they wouldn't just be helping Reed. They would be opening up new possibilities for medical treatment across multiple species. The risks were high, but as humans had learned throughout their history, the greatest achievements often came from taking carefully calculated risks. In the quiet hours of the station's night cycle, as Tom made his final adjustments to the new interface, he felt that familiar mix of excitement and anxiety that came with pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Tomorrow would bring either another step forward in medical science, or another lesson in how to learn from failure. Either way, they would keep pushing forward. The day of testing the new adaptive interface arrived with a tension that could be felt throughout Space Station Omega-7. News of the project had spread, and representatives from both human and Commonwealth medical institutions had gathered to witness the attempt. Tom stood beside Reed's bed, running through his final checks. The new interface looked deceptively simple, a slim, silvery device with subtle blue-green biolights pulsing along its surface. But inside, it contained some of the most advanced hybrid technology ever created. Everyone's watching this time, Reed observed, their scales showing a mix of nervous purple and anticipatory blue. No pressure, right? Tom managed a small smile. Just think of it as having a bigger cheering section. He looked at the device in his hands. This version is different. It will take time to adapt to your neural patterns, but once it does, the connection should be more stable and natural. Dr. Jones monitored the readings from her station. All preliminary scans are clear. Quantum field stability at 98%. Bioneural sync ready for initialization. Tom took a deep breath. Okay, Reed. Just like we practiced. We'll start slow and let the system learn. He carefully positioned the interface. Beginning neural sync in 3, 2, 1. The interface activated with a soft hum. Reed's scales rippled as the initial connection established. The monitoring systems showed the adaptive algorithms beginning their work, learning and adjusting to Reed's unique neural patterns. How does it feel? Tom asked, watching the readings carefully. Different from before, Reed replied thoughtfully. Less mechanical. More like remembering how to move rather than being told how to move. The first hour passed without incident. The interface continued to adapt, its artificial neural networks forming increasingly complex patterns that matched Reed's natural nervous system. Small movements became smoother, more natural. Then, during the second hour, something unexpected happened. Reed suddenly sat up straighter, their scales blazing with bright blue shock. I can feel my lower body! Not just movement, actual sensation. Tom quickly checked the readings. The interface wasn't just bridging the gap in Reed's nervous system, it had begun reconstructing the damaged neural pathways, using its adaptive algorithms to rebuild the connections in a way that matched Reed's natural biology. This is unprecedented, Dr. Jones breathed, staring at the data. The interface isn't just bypassing the injury, it's helping the body heal itself. But their excitement was short-lived. Moments later, Reed's scales flashed warning red. Something's wrong, they gasped. Too much information. The interface's adaptive algorithms had begun cascading, creating feedback loops that threatened to overwhelm Reed's nervous system. Tom's fingers flew over the controls, trying to stabilize the connection. The system's adaptation rate is accelerating beyond safe levels, Dr. Jones warned. We need to shut it down. No! Tom's voice was firm. If we shut it down now, we'll lose all the progress the interface has made in mapping Reed's neural patterns. He worked frantically at the controls. Reed, I need you to focus. Your nervous system is trying to process too much at once. Think about something simple. Focus on one sensation, one movement. Reed's scales pulsed rapidly between red and purple as they struggled to control the overwhelming input. But slowly, following Tom's guidance, they managed to focus their thoughts. The cascade of neural activity began to stabilize. That's it, Tom encouraged, watching the readings normalize. The interface is learning from this too. It's adjusting its adaptation rate based on your responses. Over the next several minutes, a new equilibrium established itself. The interface's adaptive algorithms found their balance, working in harmony with Reed's natural nervous system rather than overwhelming it. When the crisis passed, both Tom and Reed were exhausted but triumphant. The interface had not only survived its greatest test, it had evolved because of it. You know, Reed said quietly as the medical team reviewed the data. Most species would have shut down the system at the first sign of trouble. But humans, you look for solutions even in the middle of a crisis. Tom nodded, already making notes about the interface's unexpected behavior. That's because we've learned that sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come right after the moment, when everything seems about to fall apart. The trick is being ready to catch those breakthroughs when they happen. As word of the test's success spread through the station, Tom knew they had achieved something far beyond their original goals. They hadn't just created a way for Reed to walk again, they had discovered a new approach to healing that could revolutionize medicine across the galaxy. 3 months after the breakthrough with the adaptive interface, Space Station Omega-7's main observation deck was packed with spectators. Medical professionals from a dozen species gathered to witness something unprecedented, Reed's first steps without any physical support. The interface had exceeded all expectations. Over the past weeks, it had continued to learn and adapt, helping Reed's natural nervous system rebuild itself in ways nobody had thought possible. What had started as a simple bypass system had evolved into something that could actually promote healing. Tom stood nearby, medical tablet in hand, watching Reed's scales shimmer with determination. The interface, now barely visible against their iridescent skin, pulsed with a steady rhythm that matched their neural patterns perfectly. "Ready?" Tom asked, though he already knew the answer. They had practiced this moment countless times in private. Reed's upper appendages moved in their species' version of a smile. "I've been ready for this since the day of my accident." Their scales rippled with a mix of excitement and nervous energy. The room fell silent as Reed began to move. Slowly at first, they shifted their lower body, testing each neural connection. Then, with deliberate care, they rose from the specially designed support chair that had been their constant companion for so long. There was no dramatic stumble, no last-minute crisis. The interface did its job perfectly, translating Reed's intentions into smooth, controlled movements. Each step was steady, purposeful, and entirely their own. The gathered crowd watched in amazed silence as Reed walked the length of the observation deck, their movements becoming more confident with each step. When they reached the huge viewport overlooking the stars, they turned back to face the audience. "When I was first injured," Reed's voice carried clearly through the quiet room, "I was told to accept my limitations. To understand that some things cannot be changed." Their scales flashed brilliant blue in the starlight. "But then I met a human who didn't understand the meaning of impossible." The medical conference that followed was unlike any before it. Tom and Reed presented their findings together, showing how the merger of human innovation and Commonwealth biology had created something entirely new. The adaptive interface had implications far beyond treating paralysis. It represented a new way of thinking about how different species technologies could work together. "The key," Tom explained to the assembled doctors and researchers, "wasn't trying to force one species' solution onto another's problem. It was creating something new that could learn from both." Later that evening, as the station's day cycled dim toward night, Tom found Reed on the observation deck again, watching the stars. "The Commonwealth Medical Council approved the interface for wider testing," Tom said, joining them at the viewport. "They're already talking about adapting the technology for other species, other types of injuries." Reed's scales shifted to a thoughtful purple. "You know, when I first arrived at this station, I thought my career in space construction was over. I never imagined that my injury would lead to something that could help so many others." Tom smiled. "That's another human trait, finding opportunities in adversity. Some of our greatest medical advances came from trying to help just one person." "Your species is remarkable," Reed observed. "You're not the strongest or most advanced in the galaxy, but you see possibilities where others see only problems. You take risks when others counsel caution. And most importantly, you don't give up." The stars stretched out before them, countless points of light representing worlds where the technology they'd created might someday help others. Already, medical teams across the galaxy were studying their work, looking for ways to adapt it to help patients of different species. "I have a new construction project starting next month," Reed said suddenly. "The interface has been stable for weeks now, and the doctors have cleared me for work." Tom raised an eyebrow. "Back to building the future?" "Thanks to human ingenuity, yes." Reed's scales rippled with joy. "Though this time, I think I'll pay more attention to the safety protocols." They shared a laugh, human and alien together, united by what they'd achieved. Outside the viewport, a transport ship streaked past in a flash of light, carrying news of their breakthrough to other worlds, other species, other patients who might now have hope where none existed before. It was a reminder that in the vast expanse of space, the greatest achievements often came not from the strongest or most advanced civilizations, but from those willing to try what others thought impossible. Humanity might be young among the stars, but they had already proven that their greatest strength lay not in their technology, but in their unwavering determination to push beyond perceived limitations and help others do the same.